Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to figure out how to crochet an iris. So I drew this picture on the live stream of an iris flower, and I kind of tried to figure out how the petals are shaped, breaking it down based on what an iris looks like. And then in the live stream, we made this first piece, which is going to be one of these petals, and it's just got me totally inspired to make another flower tutorial. So if you want to make an iris with me, keep watching. First things first, we're going to need some yarn. I've got this number 4 weight acrylic in a variety of shades. We're going to be using some light and dark yellow, some light and dark purple, and then maybe some of the pinks and paler greens and creams. I don't know for sure yet, but at least those purples. And then for the stem, we're going to be using green. You'll also need a crochet hook. I'll be using a 3.5mm hook today. You'll also need some scissors, as well as a yarn needle to weave in your ends and to sew together the flower. So gather your supplies and let's jump in. Oh, I missed a supply. I'm also going to need something to make the stem sturdy, and I have these knitting needles that I have not used. They're just bamboo knitting needles. These were gifted to me by Miss Candace, so thank you, Candace. But even though I haven't used them as knitting needles, I think they would make a perfect sturdy stem for our iris. So that's what I'm going to use one of these for, and then we'll have to make another flower for the second one. We're going to start with the upright petal. So first, create a slip knot with the darker purple. Then chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then single crochet in the second chain from the hook and single crochet across. For a single crochet, insert into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And I'm going to single crochet to the end of my row, where I will be left with 6 stitches in my row. There's my last single crochet. At the end of the row, I'll chain 1 and turn. Now I'm going to insert into the first stitch of the row, and I'm going to single crochet across. At the end of this row, chain 1 and turn. Here I am at the end of that second short row, put my last single crochet in, chain 1 and turn. And now you can see we've got this short row of 6 stitches, and we're just gonna single crochet across until this little piece of fabric is a square. That should be about 6 rows, but I'll meet you back here after my 6th row to show you how it's looking and what we're gonna be doing next. Here I am after my 6 rows, and you can see it's a perfect square now. So I'm gonna yarn over one more time and pull through, and then I'm gonna cut my yarn here, and this is actually the middle of our petal. So I'm gonna weave in one of these corners and leave the other one not woven in, and then we're gonna move on to the next step. Next, we're gonna be working with the lighter purple. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect my yarn at the side that the tail is coming out of. So right where that tail comes out of, I'm going to insert my hook into that last stitch, and then with my new yarn color, I will yarn over and pull a loop through, and then I'm going to chain 1. Now I'm going to crochet up the side of the rectangle, up the side of the stitches. So the rows go this way. I'm working up the side of the rows. So in each row, I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to crochet over my tail as well. Insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Insert into the first stitch of the next row, single crochet into the first stitch of the next row, single crochet, first stitch of the next row, single crochet, and first stitch of the next row, single crochet. The last stitch here, we're actually going to put 2 single crochets in, just to help us turn the corner a little bit. We don't want it to be flat here. We do want it to curve up eventually, but we still need a little extra room. So in this last stitch here, I'm going to just put a second single crochet. And now we're working up a straight row. We're actually working up the bottom of our initial chain. So from here, in each stitch, we're gonna do a single crochet until we get to the next corner. So there should be 6 on each side. the one that we put 2 single crochets, that's where we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Perfect. And now we're at the corner here. And in that corner stitch, this is actually going to be the top of our petal. So this one, we need to do a bigger increase. So this is the bottom where it will sew onto the actual flower. This will be the side of our flower. And then these two will be the top. So we need to add a few extra stitches in here. In this spot, I'm going to put 3 single crochets. So there was 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And that's just going to help curve around that corner to keep this side flat. Now, across this row again, we're going to put 1 single crochet in the first stitch of each row all the way to the next corner. And again, it should have 6 stitches. So there's stitch number 6. And now we're in a corner again, but we're across from the corner where we put 2 single crochets. So we did 2 single crochets in this corner, 3 single crochets in this corner, and now in this one we're going to do 2 single crochets again. And now in each stitch across this row, we're going to put 1 single crochet until we're back at the beginning of this round, which should be 6 stitches. All right, there we go. I've made it down to the bottom corner. So now let me zoom you in a little bit more for the next step. All right, so at the end of this round, we've got our first stitch. This is our chain 1 that we started this round with. We're gonna put our last single crochet into the same stitch that chain 1 comes out of, but we're not actually gonna be joining to that chain 1. So like this. There's no join here. Instead, we are going to chain 1 and turn the work around. From here, we are going to slip stitch up until that first single crochet coming out of the corner of our first corner. So we are going to slip stitch all the way up to there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's our 6 stitches. And now in the next stitch, the next one is our first single crochet in our 2 single crochets in the same stitch there. And now the second one, we're gonna switch to a single crochet here. And since it's a corner, we're gonna put 2 single crochets into that corner just to keep it flattened, keeping it a little less tight. And from here, we are going to single crochet all the way until we get to the spot that has 3 single crochets coming out of it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now the next stitch here is 3 single crochets coming out of one spot. Ignore that tail. In this 3 single crochets coming out of one spot, we're going to actually switch to half double, 3 double crochets, half double for those 3 stitches. So we'll put 1 half double crochet in the next stitch, then 3 double crochets, yarn over, insert the hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. There's our 3 double crochets, then a half double crochet after that, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And now we're going to single crochet until we get to the first out of the 2 coming out of one spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we go. Now we're at the 5th stitch, which is the first of 2 coming out of one spot. In that first of 2, we're going to do 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and then we're going to slip stitch down to the end of the round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And there we go. There is round number 2. So after 2 rounds, we've flattened out the corners a little bit, and then this top corner, we've made it taller with double crochets. So now you can already start to see the petal shape forming. Now we're going to slip stitch back up to this section. We're not actually going to add any more to these sides. So we're only going to be crocheting between this and this for the next few rounds. We're going to stop working these sides. So right now we're connected down here. We're going to slip stitch up to here, and then our row will just go from side to side like this. You know what? I'm going to grab a stitch marker to make it easier to see. All right, so I marked my new space, but I have to get over to that space first. So I'm going to turn my work around. I'm not going to chain 1 here. Grab my yarn, and then I'm going to try to slip stitch up to that first stitch marker. It's a little bit dense here because I already slip stitched the other way, but I'm just gonna make my way up to that stitch marker before we start actually doing some new stitches for the round. What in the world are you doing, Beelzebub? All right, next one, my marker. I think this one is the last one. All right, so now we want a flare to go out at this point. We want to start widening out that petal. So we'll start with a chain of 1 at this first stitch marker corner, and we're going to put 2 single crochets into that stitch. There's 1 and there's 2, and that's going to sort of force this up a little bit, which is what we want. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet in the next stitch. Then in the following stitch, we're going to put 1 half double crochet. In the next stitch, 1 half double crochet. And in the next stitch, 1 half double crochet. You can see that made it a little taller. So there's 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 1 in the next stitch, then 3 half double crochets. And now you can see we're almost at the top. We're gonna put a double crochet into the next stitch. There's 1 double crochet, and then a double crochet into the next stitch. There's a double crochet, and 1 more double crochet into the next stitch. So then 3 double crochets, and now we're at the middle of that 3 double crochet. So this is actually the top corner now. So in that 1 double crochet stitch, we're gonna put 3 double crochets. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And then in the next 3 stitches, we're gonna put 1 double crochet in each. There's 1, there's 2, and here's number 3. Now in the next 3 stitches, we're gonna put half double crochets. There's 1, there's 2, and there's number 3. Then in the next stitch, a single crochet. And in the last stitch of the row here, we're going to put 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. And I think now it'll be easy for us to take those stitch markers out because we've got a really nice clear marked edge. All right, we're gonna start the next row with a chain of 1. Now in the first stitch, again, we're gonna put 2 single crochets. There's 1, and there's 2. And now this row is gonna be really easy. We're just gonna put 2 double crochets in each stitch around, but the first stitch we did 2 single crochets, and then the last stitch here, we'll do 2 single crochets there. Otherwise, we're just gonna put 2 double crochets in every single stitch. So there's my first one, and there's my second one, and I'm just gonna do that all the way across, 2 double crochets in each stitch. I'm gonna zoom through this because it's just a repeat of the same stitch over and over again, 2 times in each one all the way across, and I'll see you at the end of the row for our 2 single crochets in 1 stitch portion. All right, I've just about made it to my end of a row where I'm putting 2 double crochets in each stitch. You can see now how it's sort of flaring itself out, which is perfect because we need this petal to be nice and big and sort of ruffly. And for my last stitch, I'm gonna do 2 single crochets in the last stitch of the row here, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to chain 1 and turn. Now at this point, like I said, you can see how flared out it is. What we need to do next is have it ruffle like an iris petal. So we're gonna do 2 single crochets in each stitch across. This is gonna take forever, so just take your time, work your way through it, but I'm gonna put 2 single crochets in every single one of these stitches all the way across. At the end of this row, you'll really be able to see that ruffle forming. I'm gonna zoom through these single crochets because it's just the same thing over and over, 2 single crochets in each stitch around, and I'll meet you at the end of this round, or row rather, to show you what we'll do next. This is already looking pretty much perfect. Do you see the ruffles? So this is for the upright petal, which is why it's shorter. Look at how cute those ruffles look. Okay, we have 1 more row to do here, and that row is going to get us all the way around the top and all the way around the bottom again. So to do that, I'm going to chain 1 at the end of this row, turn. Now I'm gonna put 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way around, and I'll meet you back when I get to the end of the petal to show you how we're gonna get all the way around this bottom section. But I'm gonna zoom through that first part because it's just 1 single crochet in each stitch, and that's just going to help it show off the ruffle just a little bit more by adding a little bit of length after that increase. So So I'll zoom through these single crochets. I'll meet you at the end of the row to show you how to connect and how we're gonna finish the petal off. Here I am coming up to the end of that row. That took a long time. It's a long row with all those increases. And now I'm going to put my last single crochet in here, and then I'm gonna turn around. So I'm gonna go now down this row that we've done. So I did one single crochet here. So I'm gonna skip this first one because I don't wanna add any increases, and I'm gonna go to the next row down, which is this one here, with a single crochet there. And then I'm going to single crochet into the next available space there. And then I'm going to just, oh, this is all slip stitched, I forgot. Well, maybe we'll switch to slip stitches here and get our way down to the bottom of this petal with slip stitches, which are going through an area that has already been slip stitched. This petal is a little thick here. That's okay though, it needs to sit upright, so it's okay that it's thick. All right, I've finished the slip stitches now, and I'm gonna just do a single crochet in the last stitch of this row. And now I'm at the bottom of this petal. So in this bottom section here, I'm going to put, I think I'm gonna put a double crochet, just so it's as tall as the rest of the petal, just like that. Actually, I'm gonna put 2 double crochets. There we go. And then I'm gonna just join with a single crochet to that next available space. And now here on this line, this strip of stitches, I'm gonna slip stitch again because these are already slip stitched. It looks really good, but it is quite stiff and tight. All right, there we go. Slip stitched up to where we'll switch back into single crochets. So I'm gonna put a single crochet into that corner, single crochet into the first stitch of the next row. If it's tight, just wiggle your way through, it'll work. And then 1 in that last row, and then I'm gonna slip stitch to the top to join. And that finishes our upright petal. Look how cute that is. So the ruffles are amazing. You can see because we did those double crochets in the middle at that first few rounds, it's still like taller than it is wide, which is perfect. And then we can kind of organize these ruffles however it feels right. And for me, I always feel like it's super ruffly on my mom's irises when they start blooming. So I'll make them extra ruffled like that. And then that will sit in the middle section of our iris. I have a second one here. There's gonna be 3 of them total in the middle. So I'm gonna make a third one, and then we're gonna come back here to make the colorful petal that kind of flows downward. For the next petal, we're gonna start with the light yellow, and we're gonna start the same way that we did for the previous petal. We're gonna start with a chain of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Then we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook, 1 and 2, and single crochet across. And we're going to do 6 rows this way. Single crochet in each stitch across, chain 1 and turn, single crochet in each stitch across. So I'm gonna zoom through this because it's the same thing we did for the other petal, and I'll meet you back here at the end of that to show you what we'll do next for this one. All right, there's my last stitch for my first color, the light yellow, and we're gonna be doing something similar that we did last time. We're gonna work out on a diagonal, but first we have to do a couple of rows with a darker yellow. So for this first part, I am going to connect my yarn just at one of the corners that doesn't have an end coming out of it. And then I'm going to yarn over with my bright yellow yarn and chain 1. I'm not going to do a single crochet into the stitch that the chain 1 came out of, but I am going to single crochet in each stitch around until I get to the next side corner. So we've got side corner 1, we're gonna make it to the top, and then around, 1 single crochet in each. Here I am at that top corner. For this first row, I'm not going to be putting multiple stitches there. And now we're working down the side of a row. So 1 stitch in each first stitch of the row all the way down until we hit that corner. And here we are at that corner. And now I'm gonna chain 1 and turn, and I'm going to do another row, but I'm gonna skip the first stitch, and I'm gonna single crochet into the second stitch, and then single crochet up to the top. And here I am at the top now. Here's my corner stitch. In this corner stitch, I'm gonna put 2 single crochets. There's 1, and there's 2. And then I'm going to single crochet until I get to the end of this row, but I'm gonna leave the last stitch unworked. So there's my last stitch. I'll leave that unworked. I'll turn, I'm not gonna chain one. And now I'm going to single crochet one time in each stitch across. No increase in this one. And there we go. And then no chain one here, turn the work, skip the first stitch, single crochet into the second stitch, and single crochet until you get to the middle stitch of the row. And here we are at the middle stitch. In the middle stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and then I will single crochet across, but I'm gonna leave the last stitch of the row unworked. So there's my last stitch of the row. I'm gonna leave that unworked. And you can see by doing that, we've created a little bit more height with our dark yellow. Now for the next row, we're not gonna chain one. We're gonna skip the first stitch and we're gonna single crochet across. No increase in this row. We're gonna leave the last stitch unworked, single crochet. Then we're gonna skip the first stitch on our next row. We're not gonna chain one and turn. And we're gonna skip the first stitch and then single crochet across. We're gonna leave the last stitch unworked, no chain one. We're gonna turn the work around, skip the first stitch, single crochet across, but we're gonna leave the last stitch unworked. And now we're at 2 stitches in our row. So I'm gonna chain one and turn, and I'm gonna do a row with just 2 stitches in it. Then I'm going to chain one and turn, a row with just 2 stitches in it. And then I'll chain one and turn, and then I will single crochet 2 together so that we're going to be down to just 1 stitch in the row. Chain one and turn, and then put, 1 single crochet into that single crochet stitch. And then I'll chain one and pull it through. And this is going to be the base of our long petal for our bearded iris. I'm gonna trim my yarn here, pull that end through, and then I can weave it in and we can get to working in purple. Okay, so this is where it's going to get interesting. You can see now we've got our initial square for the bottom piece of the petal. Then we have these rows with some decreases and increases, bringing the petal up. And then we have this really short row of single crochets that is going to be the bearded part of the bearded iris. So this is the inner part of the petal. This is gonna be sticking kind of up like this in order to mimic that bearded iris shape. So now it's time for us to connect our purple, but we're gonna do a round with this sort of fuchsia pink first, and let me zoom you in to show you what we're gonna do. So I'm going to use the fuchsia pink, berry pink, for this part. This part is going to have a little bit of a weird thing happen in it, so pay attention. Where my tail comes out at the bottom, I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over with the new color, and chain one. From here, I'm going to single crochet all the way up this line, and then all the way to where my short row starts. So I'm going to crochet all the way to this point, and you'll see why in a second. I have this idea. I hope it works. So I'll single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is the first side of the smaller square. And now again, I'm just going to go up this side with one sirens and bird noises, geez Louise. And then I'm going to work up this side now until I get to the point where the row shortens. I'll meet you when I get there. I'll just go with you along the way. There we go. And this is the point where we are about to get into a short row. So let me put my single crochet in, and you can see here, this is our last stitch right here. And then this is our first stitch of the row getting long again. So what I'm thinking I want to do is I want to single crochet in that last stitch, but I'm going to do it through both pieces so that this is no longer part of our row, and then it is a separate piece for the bearded part of the bearded iris. So here's how I'm thinking I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finish with one more single crochet first, because there's one corner stitch here. We wanna work on the actual short row. So there's a single crochet there, and then into this corner, I'll insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then I'm gonna come behind all the work, just totally ignoring this kind of tongue. And then in the next corner, which is right here, can you see that? I'm gonna come around like I'm doing a stitch into it. So insert, yarn over and pull up a loop. And now I can yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And now look, I have a round that is going behind that tongue for the bearded iris. Now for the rest of the round, I'm just going to single crochet 1 time in each stitch until I get down to where I started, and it should be symmetrical. If all things have gone well, you should have about the same amount of stitches on both sides. Here we go. I made it back to my initial square, and now I can go down the initial square. And now we have a petal shape and that little nodule beard for our bearded iris. I'm actually so excited for this now. Okay, I'm at the last stitch. I'm gonna put a single crochet into that last stitch, and then I'm gonna chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. And then in the second chain from the hook, I'm gonna single crochet, and then I'll single crochet in the next chain. And then I'm gonna slip stitch the round together here at this chain 1. And that little extra chain is just gonna give us a bit more length to the petal. I feel like I was thinking it was a little bit short on this end and it needs to like attach to the final project here. All right, so at this point, I'm going to cut this pinky fuchsia color because we are done with it. It's just that one row. And then I'll come back here and we're gonna start working with the dark purple again. All right, so here is what our petal is looking like right now. It looks like it's facing this way, but it's actually facing this way. This will be the little beard part. This is where we'll attach to the actual project. So now we're going to connect our yarn here and we're going to start creating the petal shape on this round. So we're gonna have some increases around here to sort of flare it out, and we'll probably be switching around this area into taller stitches. So we'll do like single crochets and then half doubles and doubles to sort of flare this side out. Let's get into it. I'm going to connect my yarn right at the corner of our first pale yellow square. I'm gonna insert my hook into that first stitch, that corner stitch, yarn over with my new yarn and chain 1. Now I'm going to hold my tail along my work so that I can cover the end while I'm working. And I'm going to single crochet into the first 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Then in the next stitch, I'm gonna do 2 single crochets. There's 1 and there's 2. Then I'm gonna single crochet into the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. And in the next stitch, I'm gonna single crochet 2 times, 1 and 2. And then remember, we're not working into this yellow part anymore. We're just gonna fold it back and ignore it. Then we're gonna single crochet into the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. Then we'll single crochet 2 times in the next stitch, 1 and 2. Then we'll single crochet into the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. It looks like I'm a little uneven here with my single crochets. So I had a chain 1, single crochet, 2 single crochets in 1, which means that's how I should finish right here. So this should be chain 1, single crochet, but if you look, I have a extra single crochet right here. So it's just gonna be mildly uneven. I'm not really worried. So I'm gonna slip stitch there to the last stitch. And then I'm gonna turn the work around. I'm not gonna chain 1 here. And now you can see we've got a new row started and it's gonna start to flare out. It's gonna flare out more dramatically on this next round, and that is because we're gonna start putting 2 stitches in every stitch around. So we're gonna start with a chain 1. I just said we don't do a chain 1, just follow along. And then in the first stitch, we'll do 1 single crochet. I don't wanna grow this part too fast. In the second stitch, we'll put 2 single crochets. And now in the third stitch, and then every stitch around, we're gonna put 2 double crochets. There's 1 and there's 2. So we did single crochet, 2 single crochets, 2 double crochets. And we're gonna double crochet 2 times in each stitch all the way around until we hit, not the last stitch, because that'll be a single crochet, not the second last stitch, because that'll be 2 single crochets, but the third last stitch of the row. So from here, I'm just going to zoom across with 2 double crochets in each stitch, and I will meet you at the end when we start doing our switch up of stitches again. Here I am at the end of my row. I just did my last 2 double crochets. Now I'm putting my last 2 single crochets, and then the last stitch of the row, I'm gonna finish with a single crochet. And now you can really see how, ignoring that sort of protruding area, we have this new petal shape going on underneath. And that will eventually flare out to be the bottom of our iris. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to mark the top center of the petal If it's not perfect, don't freak out. Just mark where it looks like it's the top center, right there. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna single crochet up until we meet that top point. So I'm gonna single crochet until a couple stitches from the point, I should say, but I'm marking that point. So I'll start this row with a chain 1, and then I will single crochet 1 time in each stitch until I'm up closer to the middle of the top of the petal. And when I get there, I'll meet you back here to show you what I'm gonna do to kind of flare out the top a little more and jazz up this petal. All right, so I'm close to the middle of the top of my petal now, and I'm going to count out a couple of stitches. So in the middle, I'm gonna put 3 double crochets. This side, I'll put 1 double crochet and then 1 half double crochet. So what that looks like is 1 more single crochet here. So let me put my last single crochet in, and then I can count back. So from the middle stitch, I have 2 stitches back from the middle stitch. In that first one, I'm gonna put a half double crochet. In the second one, I'm gonna put a double crochet, 1 and 2. And then in the stitch marker, I'm gonna pull that out now because I don't need it anymore. In that stitch markered stitch, I'm gonna put 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. And that will keep this side round, but also tall. In the next stitch, a double crochet. In the next stitch, a half double crochet, and for the rest of the stitches of the row, 1 single crochet in each. I'm gonna zoom to the end of this row and I'll meet you back to show you what it's looking like and what we're gonna do next. Here I am at the end of the row, and it is starting to make more sense that this is going to be a petal. I know it looks so weird right now, but it's gonna be like a perfect iris petal. So there's my last single crochet, then I'm gonna chain 1 and turn, and now here's what she's looking like. You can see it's a little taller here. We need to do the same sort of thing again, and we're going to be doing first, we're gonna do the first stitch in single crochet. We're actually gonna do the first 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're gonna do the next 5 in half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this point, what I wanna do is I wanna mark the same spot on the other side of the petal. So we did 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then 5 half doubles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that is going to be where I mark where I should be working in half doubles again at this point, just so I don't have to count as much. So there's that. And I think I also want to take a second and mark the top again so that I have an idea. Those 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, we want to mark the middle one, because for the next row, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to switch into double crochets here after this increased little section. The next stitch, I'm gonna put 2 double crochets. Otherwise, I'm gonna put 1 double crochet in each of these guys. When I get to the middle, I'm gonna put 3 double crochets. Then I'll put 1 double crochet in each of these guys. And in the last stitch, I will put 2 double crochets. Then I'll switch back to my 5 half doubles and 3 singles. Hopefully that made sense. So let's do it. Starting with 2 double crochets in the next stitch. Then I'm gonna double crochet all the way up until I hit that stitch marker. Just 1 double crochet in each stitch up to the stitch marker. Using stitch markers allows me to not have to count so much. If you want to do it by stitch count, you be my guest, but this to me is so much easier. Just keep it symmetrical rather than like counting really hard. I try that and it's difficult. All right, there, I've made it now to the top of the work. I'm gonna take out that stitch marker, and then in this center stitch, I'm gonna do 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm gonna double crochet 1 time in each stitch until I get to the next stitch marker. Here I am coming up to the stitch marker. In the last stitch before the stitch marker, I'm gonna do 2 double crochets. There's 1, and there's 2. And then I'm gonna take my stitch marker out. I'm gonna half double crochet into the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in the next 3 stitches, I'm gonna do single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And then we can chain 1 and turn. All right, here's the shape of our petal now. It is looking very close to the correct shape, I think. We're gonna see. And for this next row, we're gonna be doing another row with increases. In the first stitch, we'll just put 1 single crochet. In the second stitch, we'll put 2 single crochets. In the third stitch, we'll put 2 half double crochets, and in all the other stitches all the way around, we'll put 2 double crochets, but we're gonna mirror it on the other side. So we did 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 2 half doubles, 1 single, 2 singles, 2 half doubles. So that's where I will mark so that I know when I get to that point, I have to stop with my double crochets. But now for the rest of the round, I'm gonna put 2 double crochets in each stitch of this row. So I'm gonna zoom through these double crochets because it's just a repeat of the same stitch 2 times in every single stitch. And I'll meet you when we switch back to half doubles. Here I am coming up to the end of the row. I'm gonna put my last 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and then I'm at the stitch marker. I'll take the marker out now, and I'm gonna do 2 half double crochets in that stitch markered stitch, 1 and 2, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch, 1 and 2, and then 1 single crochet in the last stitch of the row. You can see now, it's weird looking with this thing, but it's gonna make sense. This is gonna make sense. Kind of looks like a stingray. Cool, okay. Stingray amigurumi? Anyway, no, this is going to be the petal for an iris. And you can see we've got some ruffling happening now, which is super. The next step is to get that ruffling going even further. And to do that, I'm going to switch back into single crochets so that the ruffles will be a little bit tighter. Oh my gosh, this is so cute. So I'm gonna start with a chain of 1, then I'm gonna single crochet 1 time in the first stitch, and otherwise I'm gonna single crochet 2 times in each stitch all the way around. This is gonna be a nice long round because it is 1,000,001 single crochets. And in the last stitch, I'll just do 1 single crochet. So I'm gonna do 2 single crochets in each stitch around, 1 single crochet in the first and last stitch of that long round row. So I'll zoom through this and I'll meet you at the end of the row to show you how we're going to finish off this beautiful iris petal. I'm coming up to the end of my single crochet 2 times in each stitch row, and this is looking so good. It looks very iris-like. And now I think to finish it off, what I want to do is I think I want to do a round with the color of the other petal on this whole section, or maybe even around the entire petal. I think that could be cool. So to do that, I did my last 2 single crochets in 1 stitch. Now I'm going to put 1 single crochet in the last stitch, but I'm actually going to change colors. So I'm not going to finish the single crochet. I'm going to cut my yarn here and I'm going to reattach the light periwinkle color. I think this is a good idea. If it's a bad idea, there we go. I'm going to finish the single crochet with the new color. And now what am I going to do? I think I'm going to single crochet along this side of the row, then down this side of the petal, around this side of the petal, up, and then across this row, just to kind of create a little bit of connection between those. So I'm going to start with a chain 1, then I'm going to single crochet into the first stitch of the first row, and then the first stitch of the second row, and then the first stitch of the third row, fourth, and I'm crocheting over the tails again, and 5th, and that brings us to where we switch into the pink yarn. So I'm gonna start going into the pink yarn still with just single crochets, not doing any increases or anything, just single crocheting down here until I get to that little end of the petal. And let me just trim my ends here so that they're out of my way. There we go. Now I'm at this sort of curve. So I'm going to do a single crochet into each stitch, but now I'm at the top of that really short single crochet row. I'm going to put 3 single crochets just to help me get around that curve. 1, 2, and 3, because this is where we're going to be sewing it together. Now I'm going to single crochet back up. All right, there we go. And now I'm going to single crochet up to this point. So 1 time in the first stitch of each of these rows until I'm at the top of the work. So now we're on this row again, where the purple was going straight across. So in the first stitch, we'll do a single crochet. In the second stitch, a single crochet. In the third stitch, a half double crochet, fourth stitch, half double crochet. So the first 4 stitches are going to be something other than double crochets. So let's count the first 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I know where I have to stop with my double crochets. So now for this part, we're just gonna put 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way to the next stitch marker. So 1 in each all the way to the next stitch marker, and I will meet you when I get to that stitch marker because it's just double crochets now, 1 time in each stitch. See you at the second stitch marker. All right, I've made it to the other side, right about at that stitch marker now, and this is looking so ruffly and so cute. So now I'll do my stitch marker, and then I'll do a half double crochet, and then a single crochet. And then I'm gonna join the round at that chain 1 that we started with a slip stitch. And I'm gonna cut the yarn here, pull it through and weave in that end. And then we'll talk about the petal. Come on, this is awesome. This looks so good. Okay, so if this is what the top ones look like, just imagine there's 3 of them. This is what the bottom looks like. Are you seeing the vision yet? Do you feel the iris energy? It's hard. I can imagine it. Can you imagine it if it looked like? If there's more of them, we need more. So now I'm going to make sure I have 3 of these and 3 of these. I'll be right back. All right, so now we are going to make the stem. And the stem is a little bit, it needs to be pretty dense for this. So I'm gonna use 2 strands of this dark green. And I'm gonna start with a chain of, I think about 70 is how many I'll need. So I'm gonna start with a chain of 70 and I'll meet you back here after I chain 70 to show you what we're gonna do next. 66, 67, 68, 69, and 70. There's my nice long rectangle or my nice long chain. Now in the second chain from the hook, I'm going to single crochet down the chain. And I think I'm going to be doing 3 rows or 4 rows on this rectangle. So I'll start with this first one. I think 3 should probably do it. 3 rows of single crochet, and then I'll meet you back here after my 3 rows of single crochet to show you what I'm gonna do to finish off the edge of this little rectangle for the stem. All right, here I am coming up to the end of my 3rd row of single crochets. And you can see it's probably 3/4 of an inch wide at this point. And what I'm gonna do, I'll put a single crochet in the last stitch, which is a corner stitch if we look at it like a rectangle. So I'm actually gonna put 2 single crochets in that stitch. Then I'll put 1 single crochet in the first stitch of the next row down, and then 2 single crochets in the first stitch of the second corner, just like that. And that brings me to be working along the underside of the chain. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna slip stitch the underside of the chain just to thicken up this piece of fabric just a little more on that initial side, because the bottom of the chain is always a little thinner than the top of a stitch. So I'll slip stitch down just like this, and I will meet you when I get to the other side of this long rectangle. All right, I finished my big rectangle. Now it's thicker at both ends, and we're gonna be folding it over and stitching it closed. I'm gonna do that over top of this knitting needle so that it's already enclosed in our rectangle. So to do that, I'm going to pull through the last stitch, and I'm going to leave a really long tail because I'm going to sew it together with the actual tail. I don't know how much I'm going to need, so I'm going to go a little overboard. Better to have a little bit too much yarn than to lose at yarn chicken. There we go. And now I'll thread up my yarn needle and meet you back here to show you what we'll do. All right, so here's my brilliant plan. First, I'm gonna fold over the end of the knitting needle that is, should this be the spiky end at the bottom? No, it should be the round end at the bottom. All right, I'm gonna fold over the round end of the knitting needle, and I've got my tail here, which I have threaded up onto my yarn needle. And I'm just going to start by inserting the needle down through the back of the work and pulling it closed to cover that knitting needle, just like that. And then I'm gonna come over the work into the opposite corner, down through that corner and down through the back, just like that, pulling it closed to cover up the bottom of the knitting needle. Perfect. So now I'm going to insert into the next stitch down on both sides like that, pull it through with just a whip stitch into the next stitch on the side, pull it through, there we go, and then one last stitch here, pulling it through There, now that side is closed up. Now I will just stick the needle underneath and bring it out on the other side. There we go. And then I'll just stitch through the sides on the other side. Same thing with just a whip stitch, just to close up the sides here and cover the bottom of the knitting needle. And there we go. And that brings us back to where we started. Now the next part is really easy, it's just tedious. So I'm gonna pick up the next stitch on the back side. I'm gonna go through the whole stitch, just like that. And I'm gonna pull the needle and the yarn all the way through. Then I'll pick up the next stitch on the first side. I'm always kind of coming from the inside of the work out, and then I'll pull that all the way through. Then the next stitch on the other side, and I'll pull that through, and then the next stitch on the other side. And I'm just gonna repeat that all the way down this stem to connect this square and turn it into a round, which will fully cover our knitting needle. It's gonna take me a while to get here, but I'm gonna just zoom through these stitches because they're just a repeat of inserting the needle down through one stitch, then through the next stitch on the other side. So I'll see you once I get the rest of the stem stitched together. All right, I've stitched it up and look at how perfect that is. It's gonna be a perfect stem. So now the only thing I need to do is I need to cover the top here. So what I'm gonna do for that is I left a little bit uncovered. I'm gonna fold it over like this. Then I think I'm gonna tie these together so that I can get the tails out of my way. Just like that. Gorge. And then I can take these tails and just kind of shove them inside of that folded section because we'll stitch over them and then they won't show up. And now with my yarn, let me zoom you in. So at this point, I'm going to start stitching through both sides of the fabric, both this flap. I'll stitch through the flap and then I'll come back down through the stem and then up through the flap, just like that. And I'm just gonna whip stitch that to close up this side. And there we go. That first side is now stitched up. Then I'm gonna insert the needle down through the work and come out through the other side like this. Cool. And now I'm gonna close up the second side the same way. There we go, I made it to the top. Now I can just weave this end in and then I'll just trim that. And now we've got a stem. And you can see the stem is stiff. It's got wide ends on it. I think we'll attach the flower to this end. That's the perfect width for an iris. Let's put it together. All right, I got all 6 petals done now, and we have our stem, so it is time for assembly. And we have 2 sort of parts to this flower. The first part is gonna be the lower petals, and those are the ones that sit sort of flopped down, these ones. And then we have another section that is gonna be 3 petals that sit upright, like this. It's gonna be so pretty, I can already tell. Look at how pretty the colors look. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so gorgeous. So let's start with the inner circle, getting those stitched so that they sit upright. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do on the upper petals is I'm gonna fold, if we look at that purple square, I'm gonna fold it together like this. And then I'm gonna use the tail that's left behind to stitch up, probably till about maybe here, maybe 4 or 5 stitches. I'm gonna stitch closed here. And I'm gonna do that by inserting the needle through one of the stitches on the back side and then coming from the inside to the outside on the front piece here. And then the next stitch up on the back piece, and then the next stitch up on the front piece, and the next one up on the back piece. And I think this is where I'm gonna finish that securing. And I'm just gonna do a last stitch pretty much through the same spot twice, just so it's kind of secure. And then I'll weave that end out through the bottom. And I'm gonna do that to all 3 petals. All right, I'll be right back after I do the other 2. I'm so excited. This is coming together so well. Okay, so here's the inner petals, and now it's time to stitch them together now that we've done that little modification. God, that looks like an iris. And to do that, I'm gonna get them all kind of lined up like that. And then I'm gonna take, I think I'm gonna do the purple yarn and I'm gonna stitch it together with this. I kind of wanna just do it with thread. I feel like this yarn is so bulky. I'm gonna use thread. I feel like I have been just at war with this thick yarn, using it to sew stuff together, so I'm instead going to opt to use thread This is just 100% cotton white thread, and I'm doubling up the strand. And then I'm going to line these 3 petals up together as upright as I can. And I'm just gonna hold them as best I can. And I'm gonna insert my needle through all 3 just to start. Hey, stop that, cut it out. Then I'll just tie that together with a little knot. This is not what's gonna be securing it, it's just kind of to give something sturdy to hold on to. All right, now I'm gonna stitch through all 3 of these with my thread just to connect them really securely. I'm not really doing any specific technique though, I'm just stitching them together. Sticking my needle in different spots and pulling it tight. And I'm just gonna do that until this feels kind of secure and strong. Just gonna go around and keep picking up pieces with the needle in order to sort of close this up really tight. I'm gonna zoom through that and I'll meet you back here after that's done. Okay, now that that's stitched together, I'm gonna wrap up some yarn around my finger, then cut it, be careful. And then I'm gonna take this yarn and I'm gonna cut it in half one more time, right there. And I'm just gonna stack it on top of itself like that. And now I'm gonna take this yarn and I'm going to put it on the inside of these petals. So in here, I'm just gonna kind of drop it on each of the axis points here to just create this stack of yarn. And now with the yarn needle and the thread, I'm gonna insert the needle up through the bottom of the flower. Watch your finger. And now I'm gonna stitch this pile down. And I'm just gonna do that by going back down through the work in a slightly different spot. I'm gonna do that until this is all securely connected. Probably take me a few minutes, but it'll totally be worth it. Okay, and that's feeling pretty good. Pretty secure. Now I'm gonna fold my petals back up the correct way, and everything here that's sticking out I'm gonna trim, but first I'm just gonna stitch this down a little bit more. All right, there we go. Now I can trim my yarn because I stitched that enough times. Then I'll trim these yellow pieces on the outside. And then the ones on the inside, I'll just trim them a bit too. There we go, perfect. So now this piece is going to be the ones that stand up straight. We'll just arrange the ruffles to make that happen. But inside you'll still be able to see the little bit of yellow, hopefully, once we attach these lower petals. But first, let's put together the lower ones. Okay, so to put this one together, I have kind of an idea. Follow along here. I'm gonna go with my green yarn and I'm gonna just do 1 strand, and I'm going to start with a chain of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Then I'm going to slip stitch into the first chain, the 3rd chain from the hook, and then I'm gonna chain 1. Now I'm going to single crochet 8 times into the center of that donut that we made. The chain 1 will be a single crochet and then 8 more single crochets for a total of 9. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then I'm gonna slip stitch at the top of that chain 1 to join my round. And that is gonna be the bottom part of the outer part of the flower. So next I'm gonna chain 1, and I'm not gonna do any increases here. I'm just going to do 1 single crochet in every single stitch all the way around, which should leave you still with 9 stitches. All right, here I am at the end of the round, and this next part is where it's gonna get a little bit interesting, and that's because this is where we're gonna actually attach those outer petals. So I'm going to start with a chain 1 on this round, then I'm going to single crochet into the first stitch. So there's chain 1, single crochet into the first stitch. Into the second stitch, I'm gonna grab one of those outer petals, and in the middle spot, the centermost stitch, I'm going to single crochet through both the green piece and the petal, and I'm just gonna single crochet that together. And then I'll single crochet into the next 2 green stitches, and then after those 2, the next stitch will be through a petal. Just make sure the petal is the same way each time. That, And after we single crochet into the next 2 stitches, the following stitch will be where we attach another petal at its top point. I'm going to do that with a single crochet through both pieces. There we go. And then the next 2, I'll do single crochets just in the green, 1 and 2. And then I'll take my last petal, and in this green, I'll insert my hook into the green and then the centermost part, and make sure all your petals are facing the same way. And there we go. Hope I was in frame for most of that. Sorry if not. Single crochet those 2 together, and then I will single crochet in my last stitch around. And now I can join the round at the top of that first chain 1. Oh, there we go. And then I can pull that through, and I'm gonna leave a long tail on it because I'm gonna use the tail to sew this to the next part. So we've connected these 3 petals, and in addition, there's also this little green section. So now if we flip what we just did upside down, first of all, look how pretty. Second of all, once it opens, you can see the bottom of the iris. Here's the little beardy bits that will fold up. And now we need to use this piece and connect it to this piece. So this one is going to be offset on the second ones. So I'm just going to position it as centered as I can, and then I'm going to thread up my yarn needle, and I'm going to just sort of start stitching this together. And if it gets too difficult to get through with my yarn needle, I'll go back to the thread. So I've lined them up perpendicular or offset. I don't even know what the right word is. I've lined them up the way that I want to, and now I'm just going to start stitching through both pieces in order to connect both pieces of the flower. I'm just going to zoom through this part because I'm not really doing any specific stitch. I'm just going up and down through each of the pieces, but I'll meet you back here when I finish stitching them together. All right, even though this looks wild, this is actually done being stitched together now. Just going to tie off the ends and trim them. And now I'm gonna just weave in all of these miscellaneous ends before we start to do the final assembly, which is going to be putting it on the stem and kind of arranging it properly, because right now this does not look like an iris, but it will. Okay, so the next part is going to be kind of not super structurally strong, but it is going to make a difference cosmetically, I think. So I'm going to take a piece of thread, and I'm going to just have a doubled up piece of thread because it's going to be such a small stitch. And I'm just going to insert my needle into 1 stitch at the top of each of these upper petals. So I'm just going to find kind of like a middle top point on all 3 of them just to tie it all together. Just like that. And then I'm just gonna tie a knot, and I'm gonna cut my yarn really close. This is not gonna be like super structurally strong, but it is going to hold my top petals together in a way that I like, and then they don't fall apart, which is great. Oh, geez Louise. All right, well, I'm gonna do that again, but it's not gonna break. All right, I've got that part stitched together now. Perfect. And now, because it's stitched together, it'll kind of stay upright the way we want, and then I can just sort of maneuver the other petals to cover that yellow center a little bit, because we want that to be kind of hidden, right? So now these pieces, we want them to kind of sit up a little bit more, right? We want them to have a little bit more arch like that. So the next step is going to be getting this onto the stem. And at this point, we can do some shaping for the lower petals to keep them just how we want them. Oh my gosh, look at how freaking cute this is. It still doesn't look like it makes sense, but I promise it's gonna. All right, I'm gonna rush through this last part because I'm losing light. I'm gonna take one of the ends, I think the end that's pointy, and I'm gonna insert it into the top of the flower, and I'm gonna stitch this down. First, I think I'll do it with thread, and then I'll go back with green yarn in order to, actually the opposite. First with green yarn, and if I want to, for security, I'll go back with thread. But I'm also gonna use that green yarn to shape the bottom of the flower at the same time, if I can. So I'm gonna zoom through that. I'll let you watch how I figure out how to do it, and then I'll tell you exactly what I did after I finish it off. Oh my god, this is the coolest project I've ever done. I need you to understand. Let me just get it all sort of fluffed out the way it's supposed to look. It looks just like an iris. It's like a super ruffled, bearded iris. Oh my gosh, I'm so pleased with this. So there's the top, and now these are the ruffly petals. Look at how cute it is. Oh, what do you think? Okay, it's finished. Ta-da! The bearded iris is done. You can see these beautiful ruffly petals. I want to set this up standing so you can actually see how it looks, because this is not the way gravity will have it look. So let me set it up so I can show you how cute it is. Oh my gosh, is this not the cutest thing ever? It really did need that super strong stem that we got from using a thick knitting needle, but I think the ruffled petals really translate pretty well. This looks like an iris. It's so ruffly. It reminds me of the bearded irises my mom grows. They're so pretty and so dainty and frilly like this, and it's just so sweet. I really hope you like this one. I hope that you decide to make it, because even though it takes kind of a long time, I think it's worth it. I love the little tongues, the little yellow bearded iris tongues there, and the little peaking of yellow in the middle, I think adds something extra just to make it feel just a little bit more, I don't know, accurate? I don't know, but I really like it. The colors were perfect, and I think this is gonna be an awesome part of a crochet bouquet. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to everyone who's supporting the channel this month. Here is the list of channel supporters. You guys are awesome. If you would like to join and become a supporter also, check the links in the description box down below. All the ways to support will be listed down there. Anyways, friends, that's all I've got for you today. I'll see you next week. Bye!